A few years ago, I really stopped drinking, and it wasn't because of any specific incident. It was really more so a moment when a Warren Buffett quote actually came to mind. And the quote was about investing. And Warren oftentimes says, what's the upside? What's the downside? Can I live with the downside? And for me, I think about the upside of drinking, and the upsides can be numerous. It can be a great cultural experience, like I was in Europe last year, so like drinking the local beer, drinking the local wine, definitely a great cultural experience. I think it can also be a great way to socialize. If we've got a group of friends or we're going on a date or something like that, it's just kind of like a normal social thing to do. I think also it can be fun to be silly sometimes, to just have an absolute burn the house down night when we're being silly and wild and crazy, and sometimes alcohol facilitates that, and that can be really good too. And those are a lot of really great upside reasons to drink. The downside reasons, in my view, are really around sleep. That's probably far and away the biggest one for me. Every time I drink, even if it's just a few drinks at dinner or on a date or something like that, it's like I am definitely not going to get the full REM and deep sleep that I'd like to get. And that then impacts my energy the next day. It then impacts my ability to work out the next day. It also impacts my ability to think clearly, make good decisions. I lead a whole business of 8 people, and so it impacts my ability to like be upbeat and kind of like set the tone and be a great energetic contribution to my team as well. And once upon a time, for me, I think the downsides didn't have that big of an impact. I was just a solopreneur, not to say just. I mean, being a solopreneur is a ton of work, but the consequence was far smaller just because I didn't have the same degree of responsibility. Making a clear decision for me these days can swing business by tens of thousands of dollars. And so for me, that really, suddenly the downside wasn't worth it. When I asked myself, what's the upside, what's the downside, can I live with the downside? I kind of couldn't live with the downside for myself anymore. And, certainly there's other downsides, like, it's expensive to drink, and, sometimes we can make poor decisions when we're drinking. And some of those can lead to some pretty important downsides, like life-altering downsides sometimes, whether that's drinking and driving and something catastrophic happens. So thankfully, the catastrophe part has never really been something I've ever had to deal with. It's really just been in the smaller parts of drinking being a downside. Now, have I written off drinking altogether? No. I'll probably still have, maybe 4 or 5 glasses of champagne a year. I think it looks really great in photos, actually. So my vanity is definitely served by me having a glass of champagne and being in photos. So I'm not against drinking altogether. It's not some kind of like front-loaded decision where I'm just like, I'm never drinking again. And I think that's a really healthy relationship for me with alcohol, or with any kind of choice. Is, if I just say there's never going to be any chocolate in my life, then the temptation for chocolate grows. Whereas if I go, I can have chocolate any day that I want. Do I like the upside? Do I like the downside? Can I live with the downside? I can have alcohol anytime I want. Do I like the upside? Do I like the downside? Can I live with the downside, right? So I think that, in dieting, alcohol, exercise, anything that we're choosing to participate in, this nifty little 3-part question set from Warren Buffett actually ends up being incredibly helpful. And I think for me, when it comes to making decisions, specifically about my micro decisions throughout the day, that just having that beat, or having that pause, or that moment of awareness where I'm, instead of just reactively going for something, is to pause, get that moment of consciousness and say, what's the upside if I do this? What's the downside? And can I live with the downside? That in of itself has been a really great practice. And and it's a practice that I think I still have a lot of room to grow in, honestly. So that's why I have really not drinking much for years, and I find that question set really helps me in many areas of life.